publishers engage and monetize their users via branded video ads. But today we're going to talk about a different type of engagement in the form of push notifications. So I've got these two gentlemen here to do that with me. And so, push notifications and how they lead to growth. So think about today, you probably received many push notifications on your phone, and you may have swiped one of them and engaged with it. You might have ignored all of them because it felt a little spammy. Push can be a very powerful tool for engagement, but there's a feeling that it's been in its infancy for far too long. So Brian and Adam are here to talk about the state of the market and how they're pushing things forward to a sort of new era for push notifications. So quickly, Brian is a director of product at Yahoo Sports. He's been engaging with millions of users for social and mobile sports applications for the better part of 10 years, first at Citizen Sports, and then at Yahoo after they acquired Citizens. And you're probably familiar with Yahoo's empire in the sports category. They've got over 15 million annual registrations for their fantasy games. And Adam's the CEO of Kahuna, and Adam's been a part of a lot of big growth stories in Silicon Valley, both as an employee and a venture capitalist. Facebook, Oracle, IBM. He's been at Menlo Ventures and at Bain. And now with Kahuna, they're helping some of the world's largest companies move forward and really perfect their push strategy. So, Adam, I'll start with you. Talk to me about your view on the current state of engagement and push notifications, and given what you see in the market, what's working, what's not working, what is your approach?
Yeah, it's really interesting that push notifications kind of feels like email 10 years ago. Like, I remember my Hotmail account, and it was pretty spammy. And if you look at your notification center, you see a lot of generic spammy messages. And we were talking to head marketers and hearing about how powerful mobile is and how they wanted to communicate with their customers. And that really was why Kahuna was started, is to drive engagement and customer delight, and to do that through mobile messaging. And so we're really trying to push the boundaries and evolution of push notifications. And what's so awesome is push is just getting started.
Right. And so, Brian, tell me kind of from your perspective the state of the market and how you see opportunities for growth through engagement and through push.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Yahoo Sports, I'm focused on something very clear. It's to be the daily habit of a sports fan. And so I think push notifications can mean a lot of things. It can drive intent for purchases, push notifications that can inform you. I think what we're going to see within iOS 8, next version of Android, is that lock screen is kind of your new home screen. You'll get a lot of information from there that you may not even use that push notification to go engage with the app or go into the app. Well, you'll have learned, say, that Argentina won, and that's something that's already, the basic information, and so now you don't need to go read that story or go search it out. So it's a big opportunity, and something we've been doing since shortly after HyprMX was launched, and we got score notifications out for our sports users, and it's driven a tremendous amount of engagement and growth for us.
And Adam, you talked about email 10 years ago. What are some of the top ways you get away from that kind of spamminess? Is it personalization, or is it pacing? How do you guys talk about that?
And Brian really touched about it, is that there's parallels to email, but it's also very different. That it's not about sending 10 push messages, it's about sending the best one.
Right.
And if you get 3 emails from someone, you ignore. If you get 3 pushes from someone that you don't like, you uninstall. And so in order to really improve the delight, it's about personalization. And so we've built a bunch of technology where if it's, hey, come back to Yahoo, that's vastly different than with kind of Kahuna. They know, Brian knows, I have looked at 10 49ers articles in the last day. And so the next push message I'm getting is talking about Kaepernick's new contract. And so that personalization, that one-to-one communication, doing that at scale is really the power of push.
Yeah, it's one thing for, I get the FIFA app tells me that the game's about to start, but it's telling everyone that. The Yahoo app tells me that the Kansas City Royals are about to start. That's a very different feeling.
That's awesome.
Right. Cool. So what are some of the metrics that you guys, whoever wants to dive in, what should you be thinking about? What are the top metrics that you're looking at? And if you want to talk about maybe some benchmarks in those metrics, or even just at a higher level, the right metrics to be thinking about that maybe aren't so obvious. What are you guys doing there?
Yeah, I can kickstart it, and then that's one of the things is that for mobile messaging, it's a brave new world, and so we really believe at Kahuna our job is to build a community of marketers and be there to kind of help with key metrics. And so 2 key metrics that we really hang our hat on, and we have a bunch of others, but one is the install to engaged user ratio. How many, for every 100 installs you acquire, how many of those people become engaged users? And that's really a great measure of your onboarding capability. And then the second metric that's pretty critical is your engaged to dormant ratio. So if you get 1,000 people engaged, you take a 30-day cohort, what percent of those people have gone dark? And that's a key measure of how engaging is your app. And so we work with all of our customers to help them understand those ratios and then benchmark by industry and type of app.
Right. Brian, I guess the user journey is something that's really important for you guys.
Yeah.
You spend all this money to grow, to acquire users. Once they're in, what is the path you're taking them down? And maybe touching on what Adam was talking about, what are some of the metrics that you guys find most critical?
Yeah, well, certainly retention over a week, over a month. We really look at daily active users as a percent of monthly active users, which is similar to what Adam mentioned. And I think somebody had mentioned it yesterday, but getting an active user does not mean getting a download. I think right when the App Store came out, everyone talked about how many downloads they had, but really, yes, you have to have a download to have an active user, but there's a lot of money being left on the table, if you will, for re-engaging your existing users. So for us, as a user first opens the app, we've identified that there's a few key actions that they can take, which will help us with growth and retention. Those being, adding favorite teams, the more the better, and then setting push notifications for those favorite teams, so the user then comes back into the app when, like that Kansas City Royals alert that you got. It's really knowing the intent of the user as well. If you're opening a sports app, the first group we show you is add your favorite teams. We localize that if you allow the location prompt, whatever it's called. And then we ask for push notifications once you've added those local teams, so it's in the context, so you feel like, okay, I get that this push notification is going to be associated with these teams that I like. Once you dropped into that experience, people aren't going to come back if you do a nice job of onboarding and then have an experience that doesn't cater to the needs. So we're trying to give you as much scores information as we can. But what we've also found is, okay, you've done a good job with that onboarding, but there's a big percentage of people who will hit skip because they want to get right into it. Now, what happens 3 days later when they have some other sports apps, or they're busy at work and they don't realize that Royals game is going on? Well, you can take explicit interest as well, or as implicit interest, and push out 3 days later saying, hey, we know that you looked at a Royals game, or you looked at baseball scores in general. Hey, the baseball playoff race is, or the All-Star game is coming up. Add your favorite team and get push notifications for every game before it starts. And what we've seen is by using that type of thing is we've seen a tremendous amount of growth in our re-engagement. So for the cohort that we don't send anything to, and we just hope that they come back, we're talking 10 times in terms of re-engagement over the long term versus sending no push notifications ever.
Cool. And Adam, I guess when you see all this information come in, your system, I'm assuming, helps Brian, learn from the results of any push notification or any campaign. Talk to me about A/B testing push and how do you kind of learn and optimize based on what you've seen.
That's what was fun. What was fun about push is that it was so new that we actually built a bunch of technology on top of the push services. And so one of those is push response tracking. But what a lot of our customers are doing is they're running 3 or 4 messages and a control group side by side, and they're measuring re-engagement, they're measuring goals like purchases or favoriting teams, and they're measuring opt-outs and uninstalls. And what's interesting, what's cool about push is email takes 6 to 7 hours to get data back. You can get some of this initial data within 5 minutes. And so you can understand and then optimize and pick the best campaign and run it and run. And so what we found is the velocity of optimization. That is what's key. And so giving our marketing customers the ability to optimize quickly and iterate and not spend months doing A/B testing is run it all at once, get the best one, and even in real time, get the next 100 million people get that best message.
Yeah, right. So it's not it's not a late reaction. It's right on time. It's just in time.
Yeah,
it's basically
proactive, not reactive.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and Brian, when your team is looking at all this data, how do you guys think about who's in charge of what, and is your user acquisition team the same guys who are going through this data and thinking about engagement, or how would you recommend I guess aligning different responsibilities with the data that you're seeing?
Yeah, working at a company like Yahoo, where we're a representative of that whole company, just the sports part of it, and so it's really top down that every person in the company needs to not only think about getting installs or driving that first user experience, but getting them to come back. If a user has a really terrible Yahoo Sports experience, and that's their first Yahoo app experience, they're much more likely to skip another one of the Yahoo apps that they might see in the store. So like I feel a responsibility for the new user growth of all of our apps. Coming down to specific roles, I think one of the things we touched on earlier is just understanding that driving installs is very important, but really driving to active users is the way that I think that you should be thinking about how you're marketing and how you're growing your apps. Yeah. Oh, I also want to clarify, I said 10x earlier, I meant 100%, which are very different.
Still impressive. Cool. Maybe you guys can take a minute to talk about the technology that you're using. Not from a hardcore tech standpoint, but more from a kind of build, buy, partner scenario. Maybe Brian, what you guys went through thinking about, hey, push is maybe something's becoming more important. Engagement's just as important as growth. What do you need to build? Maybe what were some of the reasons you could decide to partner with a company like Kahuna to do that?
Yeah, so we built our own push notification system, actually even prior to being acquired by Yahoo. And then Yahoo internally has great push notification technology. What was interesting about Kahuna was that I thought they were approaching it from a different perspective, and it wasn't so much about knowing exactly what to send to, that we had these sports teams that had already been declared and send those as fast as possible, be the fastest in the industry. This is more about think about those users and what they've already done within the app and what ways that you can then re-engage and really help us with retention as opposed to engagement of our already engaged users, if that makes sense.
And to the point, we pride ourselves on making the interface really easy to understand and really easy to use. Underneath, there's a massive amount of compute. And we're actually at 30 billion records, because to do that personalization and understand the people, there are tons of signals that you have to digest, which is why I feel very lucky for my co-founder, Jacob Taylor. He's a great technologist, which is fun to have. So there's a lot of devil in the details.
It's good to have that guy that makes it all work. We have a couple minutes left. If there are any questions for Brian or Adam. It's hard for me to see actual arms being raised. Anyone out there? No? Okay. All right. Well, I guess. Oh, sorry. So Adam, we have a couple minutes left. We hear a lot from software and service providers about kind of best practices and what you might call thought leadership for user acquisition, and occasionally you see benchmarks for retention. Are there any, you get to see data from a lot of companies, and that's a nice privilege you have. Is there anything you'd like to share with us about, without revealing any one company's data, what are some consistent metrics that you see as kind of hitting the mark, what are the benchmarks that companies out here should be thinking about hitting for total engagement?
The first thing is Brian touched on it, where when you ask for push opt-in, give a reason. For them, for Yahoo, someone favorites a team, and then there's in the app they talk about enable push in order to get updates on your favorite team. That's a much different conversation than the first time you ever experienced the app. Do you want push?
Right.
So because of that, Yahoo enjoys better opt-in rates.
My instinct is always to say no until I've been proven otherwise that I should have it.
Exactly. And then the second thing, and it's kind of fun that when we were starting this company, you go talk to experts, and you listen. And I had one expert talking about, why would I ever buy something on my phone? My computer's a few feet away. And that sounded a lot like 10 years ago. Why would I ever buy something online? So I'm like, all right, I know I'm onto something. And so understanding the conversion rate, and then we doing conversion campaigns and cart fulfillment campaigns. Mobile conversion is actually really, really good when done right, which is a huge misnomer in the market when people talk about low conversion rates for mobile. It's actually pretty great, and the best companies are doing it really well.
Very cool. All right, well, I think we are out of time, so thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.